the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
Hello everyone, my name is Ronak and you're watching VectoArt. So today we are going to learn how to create a dashboard UI in WPF. So without any further ado, let's get started. So let's start by creating a new WPF app and let's fill out the project name, location and click on the create button. So now let's open the Object Explorer and select the window and go to Properties panel. And the first thing that we are going to do is change the width and height. Here I'm setting the width to 900 and height to 550, and let's check on the allow transparency and change the window startup location to center screen, and also click on the no resize button. Also let's remove the background of the window and add a rectangle on top of the grid. Now let's fill the rectangle with white color and add a border radius of 5, and let's run the application once and see how it looks. Now let's select a stack panel. Let's select the stack panel and add it on the grid. Place it on the left hand side of the grid. Now next we shall add a grid inside the stack panel and start adding the elements inside the grid. The first grid that we are going to add inside, before going to add the grid, let's see the orientation of the stack panel. It should be vertical. Let's change the layout of our window, and now select the stack panel and let's add a grid inside the stack panel. Let's reduce the height and add a margin, a top margin. Okay, so we have added a top margin of 20. Now let's update the text. So next we shall align the text inside it. For that, let's add the text alignment. What text alignment as center, and next we shall go to the properties panel and add a padding, top padding of 10, and let's change the font size to 25 pixels and set the font weight to bold. This text block that we have added will serve as a title for the dashboard. Let's also change the foreground color for the text to blue. Now let's copy the grid and add the other elements. Let's add a margin again, and this time let's add a stack panel inside the grid again and add an image, and next to the image let's add the text block. Also we'll make sure that this time the stack panel orientation is horizontal and not vertical. Before that, let's remove the other properties that we have added for the title window, and now let's reduce the padding here so that the text appears at the center. Also let's remove the text alignment, and now let's check the orientation, which is vertical, so we'll have to change it to horizontal orientation. And now let's select the image and change its source. Okay, let's change the width and height of the image to 24 pixels, and also set a margin of 10-20 pixels to the left. And also reduce the top padding for the text block that is inside the stack panel, and also set a padding of 15 to the left. So let's copy the grid that we created multiple times and set the other elements of the side panel. Here I am speeding up the process. We'll have to repeat the same process that we did for the first item in the side panel. Let's update the labels or the text block names. Soon we'll run the application first and then replace the text blocks with buttons. So as you can see, here we are changing the font weight and the font size. Okay. So now let's stop the application and select the first text block and change it to a button, and let's change the text property to content. Remove the padding. And change the horizontal content alignment to left, and add a padding of 15 to the left. Also remove the background and border brush. Now let's repeat the same process for all the other text blocks. Here I am speeding up the process again because it is a similar process that we followed for the first button. Here I am updating the XAML because it is much faster than going to the properties panel and changing each individual property. So here you can see we have replaced the text blocks with buttons. Now let's select the first button and let's remove the highlight button content highlight. So let's edit the current template of the button and select the border of the template, and let's go to its XAML and change a couple of properties. So let's scroll up, and here you can see a different brush that we are going to apply on each event, like mouse over, or when the button is pressed and the buttons are disabled, we are going to apply different kinds of brushes. So what we are going to do here is we'll just remove all the colors that are present by default, and we'll replace them with white, so that when we highlight on the button, it should not show any color other than white. We'll duplicate one of the brush and update the background property to foreground, and change the color to black, and also add a trigger. So inside the trigger, mouse over trigger, we will add one more setter. So this setter will be triggered when we mouse over on the button, and it will change the foreground color from gray to black. So right now the foreground color is black, so let's change the foreground color to gray, which will be the default, and when we mouse over on the button, it will change the color to black. As you can see, the style is working as expected. So let's apply the same resource for all the other buttons that we have on the window. Also, we'll have to update the foreground for all the buttons to gray. For that, I will go to the XAML and update the foreground for all the buttons. So let's run the application, and you can see that the styling is working as expected, and you can see the foreground color changing on mouse over. So now let's start adding the other elements. So first let's go to the rectangle and update its size and also the stack panel size. We are creating this space on the top so that we can add a path. So let's select the pen tool and draw a shape. I'm speeding up the process here because the process is very much self-explanatory. So I'm making use of the pen tool and drawing a shape, and now I'm making use of the direct selection tool to update the points. The points are nothing but the anchor points. So you can make use of the direct selection tool, which is below the selection tool, and update the points. And also let's zoom in and go to properties and change the fill to a light, or you can say a dark dusky shade of blue. Let's position it on top of the rectangle in that empty space that we created, and once done, let's add a rectangle on top of the newly created path. So let's stop the application, and now let's select the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle on top of the newly created path. So let's round the edges and fill the rectangle with a gradient, the same color that we set for the path. And on the other end of the gradient, we'll select a brighter shade of blue. Okay. So now let's add one more rectangle on top of the blue rectangle, which will have the text box inside it. So let's change the fill to white and remove the stroke, and now let's search for an image control and place it on top of the white rectangle. Change the source and select the search icon, and also change the width and height of the icon to 24 pixels. Position the image, and now let's select the text box and draw it on top of the rectangle. Also change the properties of the text box, like the background and border brush and the other brushes, and change them to no brush. Now let's change the content alignment to center and change the text to search. Now that we are done with the search box, let's add some dashboard elements. So let's select the text box again and draw it on top of the rectangle. So again, let's remove all the brushes to no brush and change the foreground to white, and again the content alignment to center. Increase the font size and change the text. So here these text boxes can be populated, or the values of the text box can be populated at runtime from the code behind. Since this is just a demonstration of the UI, I am hard coding the values. Once you are done styling the first dashboard element, let's add a subtext for the added element, or to say a label to the element, and reduce the font size and the font weight and add some text. Let's change the foreground to a lighter shade of white. Select both the controls and group it into a grid, and now copy the grid thrice. And place it next to each other. So next we will add one more rectangle on top of the blue rectangle. This rectangle will house the graph. So let's remove the stroke and change the fill to white. Before that, let's resize the blue rectangle and also the dashboard elements and reposition them. Now let's move the rectangle which was newly added to the top, change its radius, corner radius, and change the fill to white and remove the stroke. Also we will change the main rectangle that we started, which we added at the start. We'll select that and change the fill to white, and now we will add an image on top of the white rectangle. So in a real-time scenario, you will be adding a graph control here. You can make use of the live charts NuGet package or any other NuGet package for that matter. So now here in this case I have just populated it with an image. You can let's see, this is how the UI will look. We'll make some changes to the dashboard elements that we added before. Let's reduce the size, font size, and also the label size, and remove the font weight. Let's reposition them, and also the graph. Now let's add 3 more rectangles similar to the graph that we created, and populate them with image controls. Again, in a real-time scenario, you will be populating with them with the live charts or any other chart control. Okay, so this is how our application will look like. So now it's time to add some animation to the application. So let's stop the application here, and let's hide all the controls which will be animated. So let's hide the chart and the dashboard elements and the graphs. So for that, you'll have to select the element and go to properties panel and change the visibility to hidden. So now I am changing the visibility for the elements that I'm going to animate. Okay, now I'll also reduce the size of the blue rectangle. And this is which will be the start of the animation. Now I have added a storyboard, and on the first keyframe I will increase the size of the blue rectangle. So I'll go to the properties panel and increase the height to 250. So this is the first keyframe change, and on the first keyframe also I will make the search and search items visible, and on the second keyframe I will make the dashboard elements visible, and on the third keyframe I will make the graph visible, and on the fourth I will make the rest of the elements visible. So when you run the application, you can see that the elements are made visible one after the other. So here you can see that the animation is not triggered, so we'll have to go to the triggers, add a trigger, and on the window load we'll have to enable or run the storyboard. So here you can see our animation is working perfectly fine, and also the style that we added to the side panel buttons. Hope you all liked watching this video. If you do, like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.